Networking in times of crisis. I'm very happy that I have an international expert with me today, someone who has years and years of experience in networking. Hello and welcome, Will Kintish.
Hi, Niels. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much for taking the time. You know that I took all your classes and I know you for a very long time. And you know that I come from a culture, especially in Germany, and many of our listeners will be from Germany, Austria, Switzerland, where networking is not that common. And now suddenly we don't only have to network on site, but that's impossible at the moment. We also have to network online. Many people struggle doing that. Many people even struggle to network at all. With your experience, when you have someone who says, I'm not a great networker, it's just not my talent, what's your advice when they are invited to one of these networking events that they can get anything out of it?
All right, let's just talk about the old-fashioned face-to-face way.
Yes.
Pre-COVID. At the end of the day, people just don't seem to understand what networking is. You, me, and everybody in the world, we've been networking since 2 years old. Networking is simply building relationships, or take it to its absolute basic, it's just talking to people. So I cannot understand why people are nervous about it and find it uncomfortable.
Well, many say, and of course I prepared for this interview and asked people, what are your main issues with networking? Many people say, I always fear that I sound pushy or salesy because people know when I turn up for a networking event, why am I there? I want to sell my services. So when I approach someone, I usually ask, what do you do? Then they say what they do. And then they ask me, what do you do? I say what I do. And then we just go our ways. That obviously doesn't seem to work very well. How can I approach someone without being salesy or pushy?
Well, the very, very first thing we ought to do is not discuss business when we go up to people at an event. We always look for the icebreaker question, and the icebreaker question should never be, hello, what do you do? The icebreaker question should always be something we have in common at that event. So 3 examples. Hello there, where have you traveled from today? Hello there. I see that we're both guests of HSBC Bank. Who do you know here at the bank? Or if we go to a conference or a networking event, we would say, what made you give up your time to come to this event today? So we're immediately got something in common. We're in the same room on the same day at the same time. So that is how you get the relationship going. And then we can start to ask questions about what each other does. But by then, we've already broken the ice. And you know something, very often, those early questions can lead down all sorts of journeys. And you get into the business side a bit later. And that, for me, is the key of building relationships. Let's get to know the person, not what they do, not what their business is. That can come a little bit later.
So how do I transition from having a nice chat and getting to know each other to the point where I, let's say, present my business in one way or the other? How can I transition from that's the intro stuff, now we get to the point?
Well, that's the big thing. I don't want you talking about yourself. I don't want you talking about your services. I don't want you talking about your products or the company. They're not interested. They're only interested in themselves. And if you want to be very popular with the person you're talking to, simply ask good, intelligent, incisive questions. Niels, you have products and services that may be useful to a prospect at a networking event. But the only time that you will do business with that person is when you find out what their challenges are, whether they have a need for your or want for your products. So you should be spending nearly all your time asking them about them, how they started in business, what their future plans are, what their big challenges at the moment with COVID. If you then spot a potential opportunity, just gently mention what you do and say, well, that's interesting. I help some of my clients like you when they've got a problem with X. And the real time for you, if you ever have to do any selling, the real time to do any selling is not at the networking event. It's next week, next month. And that's where you go to their office and you arrive and they agree to see you. And it's very simple. Here's a sales lesson that's only going to last about 12 seconds. You go into their office, you do a bit of small talk again. Always a small talk is critical. And you say to them, do you remember last week you were telling me you had a problem with X? All I've come for today is to find out more about your company, what that particular challenge is, and maybe I can help you.
Mm-hmm.
So never, ever do we need to sell. All we need to do is inquire what people's problems are and then offer a solution.
Excellent point. And that brings me directly to another question someone asked during the preparation period I had. Someone says, networking goes well. Now the problem is, how do I follow it up? When I call them, I always think I'm going to interrupt their work. They might be annoyed that I call them. They might not be interested in talking to me anymore. How do I follow up when the networking is over? How do I get to that next step?
So we have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
We believe that there may be, and I repeat, may be an opportunity for us to do business later.
Mm-hmm.
And what we do is the following. Here is the process. And it's all to do with business cards. Not your business card, their business card. Mm-hmm. So here's the conversation. You know, a few minutes ago, Prospect, you said you had a problem with getting more business. And you know what I do now, because I just mentioned it. You look them in the eye. Oh, you say, shall we exchange cards? You get their card. You look at their card, treat it with courtesy, and then you ask the most important question of the whole conversation. You remember a few minutes ago we were talking about X and you had a problem with. How do you feel about me giving you a call later in the week or next week? And let's continue our conversation then. And then if you think it's relevant, I'll come down to your office, to your factory, and you can explain more to me then. So what we're doing here is all the way through the follow-up process, asking permission to follow up.
Excellent.
That is the most important thing. And if eventually you then go and send a proposal to them and you start to get radio silence, as I call it, keep following up. But as some of your readers might have heard, they're worrying about pestering. Well, here's the answer to that one. Very simple. So I've sent somebody a proposal. I've followed them up. And then I might follow up with a couple of emails and I'm not getting anywhere. And so I send this. Dear Prospect, I've now followed you up 3 times. I'm beginning to think I could be annoying you. Please give me guidance. If you don't want to hear from me anymore, tell me and I will take you out of my follow-up folder and that will be fine. So that way you are doing what I call offering the escape route. Tell me to get lost.
Yeah.
And it's not about, the whole problem is people think it's personal. I say it's not personal. They're just not ready for you. Simple as that. And the other thing about people who hate following up, and this for me is the big one. If you've got a product or service that you believe will add value to that prospect, by following them up, you are doing them a favor. You are offering them a gift. So I show people how to improve their networking skills. I'm going to charge them, and it doesn't matter the amount, I'll explain. I'm going to charge them €1,000, £1,000, $1,000. But the value I expect them to get from my training and my knowledge, my experience and my advice has got to be 5,000, 10,000. And therefore, I am following up to add value, not to sell for the sake of selling because I've got a budget to hit. And that is the big, big barrier people ought to be getting rid of. I'm not phoning up to sell. I'm phoning you to add value.
That is excellent advice. Talking about what you just said, offering people the option to, tell me to get lost. Some people say that sometimes they get stuck at networking events with someone who they, let's say they don't appreciate talking to that person, and they clearly see it's not a good fit. From my point of view, Germans have no problem being rude. We just say thank you. But many of my British clients said, how can I, without being rude, without leaving a bad impression, how can I end a conversation when I really see this is absolutely no fit, not even in the slightest?
Okay. There's a lady called Maya Angelou, a very, very famous American author, singer. She was so famous, she wrote 5 best-selling autobiographies. Her name was Maya Angelou. And she came out with this statement not long before she died. People often forget what you've said to them. People often forget what you've done to them, but people never forget how you make them feel. And that's what networking is all about. It's nothing to do with business in the early stages. So if you just walk off, if you meet somebody at an event and you found out that they don't know anybody, and you've had a conversation and you realize it's time to move on, you say, well, it's nice to have met you, and walk away. If they meet you again, I'm afraid to tell you, they will probably not have very positive thoughts about you. So what do? We offer them an option. We say to them, look, I'm going for a drink. Would you like to join me? Or, oh, I've seen my friend Alan over there. Can I introduce you? Or, oh, look, the food's come out. Why don't we go and get some food?
Yeah.
If they by then know people, they don't want to come with you because they want to get rid of you like you want to get rid of them. Yeah. And they will go off and meet other people. But if they do start following you around, just take them with you. Now, if I don't know an Alan or a Niels at an event, I don't know anybody and they don't know anybody, here is your script. Come on, partner, shall we go and meet some other people? In other words, go hunting in pairs and take them with you and look for a group of people, join the group, stay there for a little while, and then leave them in that group and you go off somewhere else.
Excellent. And now, of course, we only have to add one more thing to wrap the whole interview up. People are wondering, when we now have COVID-19 and all these online meetings, people say they feel that the human connection is a bit more difficult or even way more difficult when they do it online. You, as one of the most experienced networkers we have, what is your advice on online events, how to network properly during these events?
If you accept that networking is building relationships, the strongest advice I'm giving to everybody all the time is do not start trying to find new connections in the situation we're in. Look back through your old records, go back to your level 1 LinkedIn connections, go back to your little black book if you've got one, and reinforce existing relationships rather than looking for new ones. I have made a few good new online connections, but only when I've joined different mastermind groups or chat shows where I've seen somebody about 3 times and I thought, they're a very interesting person. Maybe I should have a one-to-one with them. But generally, Niels, I have done, and I'm very sad that you mentioned earlier on that I used to be an accountant. I keep a record of how many one-to-ones I've had. And the answer is, since the beginning of April, 68 one-to-ones. And I would say that 60 of them are with people that I already know, past clients, past connections, people who I fellow members of the Professional Speaking Association, just to reinforce the relationship because it's so much easier with existing connections.
Excellent. Also, that debunks the myth because we at the moment, especially on the leadership level, we have many people who say there is never a wrong time to find new clients. And I fully agree with you. Sometimes people just don't have you on the agenda as a new contact when they didn't know you before. Thank you very much. That, of course, is excellent advice. And if anyone wants to talk to Will any further, has any additional aspects, any additional points you want to talk about, I'm going to put Will's contact data in the show notes of this podcast. And now at the end of this interview, there's only one thing which I have left to say. Will, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for inviting me.